Today, I'm excited to welcome Mel, Bitcoin enthusiast and event promoter. Welcome to the Bitcoin Age, Mel.
Hello. Very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you.
Thanks.
So, before we get to Bitcoin, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you were born, where you're living.
So, I was born in Mount Clemens, Michigan, which is north of Detroit. My I'm married. I have three kids who are grown ups, kind of, and they're old enough to be grown ups. Let's put it that way. And so they're in Chicago. I am currently in Miami, and I like to be a snowbird. So we kind of go back and forth. And when we need to get away from our children, we come down here.
Cool. So we're both in Miami.
Yes, I really love it here, and I had not been here until I came to like the first Bitcoin conference in 2022 was my first like Miami conference, and I fell in love with it. I don't know. I mean, people talk about it and hate it, and I'm like, you're crazy.
I agree. I like it. I like the warm weather.
Me too.
The people sometimes are not that friendly, but there's good people everywhere and there's good people here. You just have to find your people.
For sure, for sure.
So, are there any Bitcoin meetups in Miami?
Yes. So there's a lot of Bitcoiners here. There's different groups. Bitcoin brunch in North. It's like in Little Haiti on the northern edge of Miami, I guess we could call it. And that's weekly, every Sunday. And I participate as much as I can. And it's just a very laid back, people come and go. And we just, I've learned so many oddball things there, like where we've talked about AI and just other things that I would have never known had I not started to go there. And I've met the guys who run Bitcoin Grove, and that's kind of a workspace of people who are doing Bitcoin things. I'm not a coder, I'm not a programmer. I was an early internet adopter. So in 1998, I started to sell on eBay. My husband and I wanted to buy our first house, and he had all these things called promo cars. So in Detroit, when you bought a car, starting like back in, I want to say it was the 50s. Yeah, it was definitely the 50s. They started to make this two scale 1 in 24 car that matched the car you bought. Today, these are really collectible. And so someone gave him this giant box of them that they found in the garbage. And I said, why don't we try selling these on that eBay thing? So digital cameras were so expensive, I didn't even have one. And I bought a scanner, and I took these cars and I put them on the scanner and covered them with a blanket and got every inch of them. And we started to sell these things. And we probably sold, I mean, and I'm not kidding, it was probably like $20,000 worth of these little cars. And I'm like, all right, now what else can I sell? I mean, and I realized that people are collectors, and people are always looking for things from their past, or, like let's say you get married and you have a set of china. And this was pre 9/11. I thought this was a great idea. And I had my own little replacements business. And I had all kinds of, like, I knew what the top 100 dinnerware patterns were. Like, I started to just figure it out. I was like, all right, I think I like women customers. They give me less crap, and I'm going to like cater to them. And so I was doing great. And then when 9/11 happened, everyone kind of stopped setting that formal table again. I don't know, but ever since then, it has really, dinnerware in China are nowhere near as costly as they were. So, but it was an evolution. And I just learned everything. Like, I started to become an antique dealer from the internet. Most people become an antique dealer because their parents were selling at the flea market and they were there under the table and learned about it that way. I came about it in the opposite way, and I had to hide it because people, um, well, when I get into something, I mean, I get into it. So this will lead into Bitcoin because There's two things in my life that I could see straight down the line. One of them was that everything was going to be sold online. We were going to be buying everything online, and that was in 98. I had a good job at an accounting firm. I was a financial recruiter, and I quit my job, and people thought I was insane. And I'm like, everything is going to be sold online someday, everything. And I was right. And I feel like Bitcoin is very much that same kind of thing. So anyway, when I get into something, I go all in. So once I did that, I'm like, all right, I'm going to open a shop, which is a terrible idea. Do not open a shop. I was a very I like to run around. I like to shop. I like to look for stuff. I liked the hunt. And then like to open a shop, I basically froze myself, into one spot. And I was very antsy to get out of that. So that didn't work out. I didn't like it. And then let's see, we're coming up now onto the great financial crisis, where in 2006, 2007, Detroit started to fall apart. So the automotive industry was cutting jobs, moving everything to China. My husband worked for a big three supplier, and like they were cutting his hours just every month. It was like we lost something else. And then the housing market bottom fell out. He had to go to part time. I started going to Chicago to sell because it's just a more diverse economy there. Not everything is dependent on one industry. So I got a job working for one of the biggest shows of art, antiques, and vintage in Chicago. And I loved the in-person part, like that was exciting. I came from online to now I'm in person, so I'm a little bit of both. But it was at that point I couldn't tell anyone where I learned stuff from because they still thought, and so I learned everything I could learn about that. And then I branched off and decided to start my own market, which was called Vintage Garage Chicago. That was uptown and in Evanston, Illinois, for 12 years. And I've just retired it last year. Other event that I have is the Nashville Vintage Clothing and Jewelry Show, which is once a year during Antiques Week. And it's a big show. People come from all over the country to sell. We get not just fashionistas and people interested in vintage, but we get costumers like from Netflix series. They come and buy for whatever they've got coming up. We'll get people from France who are coming from the big designer names that come for inspiration on a new line. For example, like Ralph Lauren, they have a museum. So they will generally send somebody to see if there's any old pieces or anything that they want to add to their museum. So it's a really interesting place to kind of see, and the resale market, especially with prices going up. I learned a long time ago, because I'm in this business, that I don't pay full price for anything. If I need a new dehumidifier, I'm going to go to an estate sale and I'm going to look for that. And it's going to take me maybe a little bit longer. But for example, as a wedding gift, we got a really good dehumidifier for the basement. And these things are not cheap. And it broke after 20 years. And we were like, all right, we're going to get one. We're just going to wait. We're going to wait. 2 weeks later, found the exact same dehumidifier, like it had never been used, for $50. So that is what I'm about, like that is where I've gone into that place where buying things new is just crazy. And I'm not against buying things new completely all the time, but if I have to, tires, I guess, have to be new on your car, but we have a car that we got out of an estate that was driven by a lovely woman who put about, oh gosh, how many miles were on it? Like 50,000 miles on it. It never left Chicago. It had been parked in her Lakeshore Drive condo building. And every 3 months, the oil was changed. They rotated the tire. I mean, this car, my son is still driving it. It's a 2000 Avalon. We paid Blue Book price for it, and it still runs fabulously. So this is kind of how I began to operate. And in 2015, somebody mentioned internet money and Bitcoin. And I thought to myself, wow, I'm selling all over the world. It would be so nice if we could transact in the same currency or not have to pay a bunch for fees and things to make it into your currency. It costs a fortune too. And I'm like, God, this would be great. So I buy $100 worth of Bitcoin and I forget all about it. In 2017, somebody said to me, hey, have you heard about this Bitcoin thing? Like, wow, have you seen what the price is doing? And I'm like, I've got some of that somewhere. So I go looking around and I find the account. My $100 worth of Bitcoin was worth $4,700.
Wow.
And I went, oh, what is this? What is happening? Is it going to keep happening? And I had to know everything. So I went from knowing everything about vintage and antiques and spending those 20 some years figuring that all out and being an expert on it to in 2017, I started the same thing with Bitcoin where I'm like, I need to know everything. And I'm still here. I mean, we came from working class Detroit. We had no savings. We lost our house because I don't know if you remember during that time, they were doing these funky loans, like these 80-20 loans. And so like the 80% loan had approved a short sale for us, but the 20% loan, which I found out later, is because they don't get anything. They just blew it off. So, I mean, it was like literally a year that they had before and they foreclosed. So we had lost everything. We had gone to Chicago to start over. And when I learned about Bitcoin, I started to learn about finance. I started to learn about money. You know, when you come from working class Detroit, this is not the stuff you talk about. This is not what you talk about working on the line. Somebody got a new job, you got a new truck because you worked in the automotive industry. It was like, this is just something I never knew anything about. I wish my parents had never taught us anything about money. My mom's quote was, money's only good for what it buys. So, and that was my attitude until Bitcoin, because I wanted more Bitcoin. Now, why? Why do you suddenly crave more Bitcoin? It became almost like I want to collect Bitcoin as much as I want to collect vintage antiques and art. Like this makes way more sense to me, and I feel like it's just so strange, but it all kind of ties in. But like in 2017 and 2018, during the Vintage Garage, I would have like 100 vendors. And I thought the vendors were going to pick up on Bitcoin pretty quick. Like I thought, oh, this is so smart. Like you could accept Bitcoin and if it goes up in value, across the board at some point, like everything is going to be better. And antique and vintage vendors are not rich. They're working hard. And you're self-employed, there's no benefits. I thought, oh, Bitcoin is going to be it for them. So in all that time, one vendor, came to me, and everybody knew, I made it very well known, came to me and said, will you show me how to buy Bitcoin? She was 86 at the time, 86. She
Wow.
came up to my town, bought me lunch. I showed her how to buy Bitcoin. We bought $1,000 worth. It was at like 31,000. And then we had a rocky road after that for a while. And I just kept saying, Mary, don't worry about it. It's going to be fine. So the last time her and I sat down and talked, and it was at the market, she's like, come here. And so we sat down. Like I said, the only person who was curious about it or understood it in some way. And she said, this is going to sound weird, but I almost view Bitcoin like a collectible. And I said, that's not that weird. I said, every Bitcoin that's born is different. There, it is almost like a collectible. It's like a Veblen good. It's like Louis Vuitton, but for money. And she was the only person to this day who she's got her Bitcoin still. She's 89 now. And, I was just so impressed that she got it. Like her brain understood it. And she was also an incredibly good vintage and antique dealer. Like she had that sense of what is going to sell. And I think that was the same day that she told me she sold a painting once for $750,000. I was like, ooh, whew, yeah.
Wow.
So,
So
you
you
know,
meet some interesting people,
you
and
bet.
but not a lot of them are in Bitcoin. Uh,
None of them are in Bitcoin.
okay, so are you able to accept payment in Bitcoin?
I can, but nobody wants to pay in Bitcoin either. Now,
Not
so
yet. Not yet. It's
not
coming.
yet, and that's okay. I have a plan. So I started going to the very first conference I ever went to for Bitcoin was Unconfiscatable in 2020. I was by myself. Like here I am, middle-aged white woman with a bunch of 35-year-old guys. They treated me so well. They were so kind. They accepted me and invited me and you didn't want to come to lunch with us. And I learned so much and I met so many people and I couldn't have been more excited. And I thought, I'm an event person. I can help. Tone Vase is the owner of Unconfiscatable. He was the first person when I was researching Bitcoin to make it make sense to me about the altcoins and that the altcoins were just bleep coins and they're not doing anything. It's like he somehow made me understand it. And he was the first one that just didn't pull any punches and said it like it was. And when I first began, I thought, oh, I'm going to learn how to trade. I'll become a trader because that's got to be super easy, right? Wrong. But that's where Tone comes from. He comes from a Wall Street background and comes from a trading background. So I am a heck of a chart reader. Like I can read any chart you put in front of me, but in Wall Street, chart reading and trading are not the same job. So anyway, I have followed him ever since. And as a family who had to start from scratch in 2008, we have savings now. Like we have because I learned and even though I can't trade, I can say, okay, we're in a bear market right now. Like this is the time where you want cash ready to buy lower so you can acquire more. And so that has been my goal is just to, I'm not a wealthy person. I don't have 10 Bitcoin. But I learned about finance. I learned about how our monetary system works. I learned about savings. And suddenly, the idea of saving Bitcoin was way more appealing than buying anything. So, got very, I used my skills as a vintage dealer to go and buy things for way cheaper so that I could put that money into Bitcoin, So, whether
And
it's a
you
car,
mentioned,
whether it's the
yeah, you
dehumidifier.
mentioned that earlier, right? I was going to ask when you said that you try to get good products that haven't been used very much. And
Yes.
of course that makes sense. And that's because Bitcoin encourages us to have low time preference
Yes.
because Bitcoin, as we know, because of the way the system is set up, tends to increase in value, which is
Yes.
what our money should do. But unfortunately, we print too much money, so it does not increase in value. It goes down in value.
Yeah, it's
And
unfortunate.
and none of
And
us are told this, right? Like you said, that was part of your Bitcoin rabbit hole. What else did you discover down there?
yeah, gosh. Well, you discover that I don't know, I don't want to get too depressing, but everything's kind of a lie. I mean, it's kind of a facade. And it's all about how it looks, and you need to worry about yourself and you need to pay attention and do whatever you can to take the reins of your life and your money. And if that means, see, to me, that's self custody Bitcoin. Like, that is empowering. That's mine. You cannot shut my cold wallet off. You can't shut my account down. You can't do any of that. And so then it just became a like, all right, how do I make more? How do I learn more? And so, I spent a year volunteering at every Bitcoin conference I could, Pacific Bitcoin, BitBlock Boom, because I finally, back to Tone, I pestered him long enough that he let me run Unconfiscatable in 2023. And I spent a lot of time going to other conferences to see what people were doing, and to see what I could do there. And we had a great conference. And like I was explaining to you a little bit earlier, this year there were 52 conferences that I know of. Okay. In the years prior to that, there was maybe 4 or 5 maximum, in the United States. And this year it was just like something going on every week. So it just seemed like and Tone decided to make it more into a fun time. There's scammy awards, there's a poker game, and there's a carnivory dinner. So everything, it's like networking now, and it's Bitcoin oriented, but we've heard everything. I mean, we've pretty much heard everything. So now it's a matter of, like, in my mind, how do we make more Bitcoin? How do we create businesses that have to do with Bitcoin? And that's not easy, because I will say, because we don't control Bitcoin. Bitcoin is in control of itself. And so when you see, like, the presidential candidate whipping out a new coin, he can control that, okay? Because he's making his own money, which is not legal. But that's what we've been seeing, because when Bitcoin exploded in price, the people who had given up on it decided, oh, wait a minute, maybe I can create my own Bitcoin. And, like, I remember doing some okay, first I listened to an interview with the founder of XRP. And he was explaining how it worked. And it was with Peter McCormick. And I was listening and I'm thinking, are you kidding? Are you kidding? Like, everything he was saying, it made no sense. He's like, oh, and we pull out this much every month, basically to pay themselves, and making it sound like this was some innovation that made no sense to me whatsoever. And how no one can just, like, read and learn and listen is beyond me. And then, like, I remember thinking about Stellar, XLM. No, it was Cardano. Because, those were the 2 biggies back then. Cardano. I started Googling, like, where are their offices? Oh, they don't have any offices. What do they do? Oh, nothing. No, it's a coin you created for, liquidity. And whenever it pumps, you sell some. Like, there's no purpose to this whatsoever. And I just went, wow. So I also learned that like I said, half of the world is BS. I mean, if you're a good salesperson, you can create anything you want. It doesn't mean that it's going to work, but there's a lot of grifting, and I see why. So, at some point, someone's going to have to do something about it. They're going to have to make the bleep coins into equities, because that is what they are.
Well, and that part of the journey is part of many of our journey, right? Many people come because they feel something's wrong in the system. They want to make money quick. That's why people go to the lottery. That's why people go to altcoins. And
Sure.
I'm not saying there isn't some good technology. There's some very good technology.
Yeah,
But
I'm not saying that something couldn't work down the line or have a purpose down the line. I just haven't seen it yet.
Well, and there's 2 key factors, is that Bitcoin has no leader. Satoshi Nakamoto disappeared, and we don't know who that or they are. And Bitcoin only ever has 21 million. All
Right.
of the other coins, as you mentioned, some more than others, put more into the system, just like the fiat system.
Yep.
And
Think more.
yeah, so
Or just start with,
Bitcoin,
like, billions, and then you never
yeah,
run out. And
yep,
people don't realize that. Like, even if
yep.
you're buying an altcoin, do you have any idea what the supply of this is? Nah.
They
Not
have a
something
supply, but they can
anyone thinks
create
about.
more, right?
Yep.
Because there is somebody at the top. And yes, there's some very good traders and you can make money, but you can also lose a lot. And
Right. And if you're a
as you
trader, yeah, if
yeah,
you're a trader by trade and that's what you do every day, great. And
right.
I do know some really good traders, and it's special. It takes a skill. Like I said, I thought, and I think this is also at the time, this was also a common thought was being able to trade for so you could make more. And like I said, it's a specialized skill. You know, there's a reason why these guys make a lot of money doing it because the risk is very high. So if you can do it, it's going to be good.
And
But if you have no idea, it's not a good idea.
I I had Jeff Booth on the show, and he reminds me that when you participate in that, you're participating in the fiat system and you're actually making it stronger. So
True.
I'm not saying I'm completely out of it because I still pay in US dollars,
Oh
but
yeah.
more and more I try to go towards the Bitcoin system and
Well, I'll
even
be
pay.
honest.
Yeah.
Everything I have is in Bitcoin, and if I need fiat dollars, well, then I have to plan for that, and I have to make that happen. And but I feel much more secure that way, and maybe that's crazy. And oh my God, when I tell my dad that, I told my dad that not long ago. I thought he was going to he was just making a noise that I can't even duplicate. And I just thought, I am comfortable. Like, I'm not worried. Now, that takes a certain amount of risk tolerance. And I know that not everybody has it. And, you know, my husband and I have had this conversation. Both understand that that's where our livelihood is. And that's where what we earn has been. We're both comfortable with that.
So your husband's on board with
Yes.
and has
Yeah,
done the work
he's
too.
not active in the community or anything, but he knows what I'm doing and he's researched along with me all this time. Um, you know, I started mining Bitcoin last year. Like I've got 5 rigs in South Dakota because I
Cool.
wanted to learn, you know, like having some skin in the game makes me learn. But yeah, I very recently said to him, you realize where we sit, you know, and being older, we're not the 35-year-olds that are getting into this to where if they get wrecked, they've got time to come back. And that's a little more dangerous, but I'm here and that's what I'm going to do because I feel much better about it unless something changes.
Yes, and you've done the work and you understand it.
Yes.
It's like for me, I don't like the idea of working, especially in a job you don't enjoy till you're 65, and then retiring and not having enough because the government's printing too much money. So
Yeah.
I really do want to support this system where that's not the case. In time, you don't need to invest your money. You can just hold it in Bitcoin and it goes up. So
Yep.
I hear what you're saying and I understand why your dad would feel that way. I don't tell people exactly how much I'm in because they wouldn't, you can't understand unless you've done the work, for one thing.
Right. And again, you know, I've been trying to explain, you know, the only person who's listened to me is my sister, and she has some Bitcoin. Um, she doesn't have a whole Bitcoin, but I think she's maybe got zero point 0.2, which in my opinion, that's
Great.
probably enough. I mean, she's 10 years younger than me, and she's never touched it since she bought it. And I don't bug her. Like, you've got that much, and that's good enough for me. Like, my daughter, I was just having a conversation with her yesterday, and I said, please, $10 a week, just $10 a week. She's pregnant, and they are working for every dime, and I can't get her to listen to me. She's like my dad. She's like, there's like this section of boomers, and then the 30 somethings are also boomers in their own strange way.
I haven't heard that before. That's
Yeah, they
interesting.
are. She is like a boomer. I mean, and she's not the only one that I've
Mm.
tried to talk to about it. Like people think it's cuckoo. And then I think to myself, is it cuckoo? What if it is? But I can't, you know, and I've told people this is like the internet. Like, this is about the internet. Like, when you thought the internet was only for crime, sex, drugs, and that criminals were going to be doing all kinds of things on the internet, and nobody liked that. That's why antique dealers and vintage dealers didn't want to sell on eBay at first. It wasn't until an enormous amount of money started to flow that way that did they start to change. And back in 2017, I was talking to all of them about it. I was trying to get them to take it. I've always had on my website, we accept Bitcoin. And I thought, if anybody wants to pay in Bitcoin, I'll take it and give them the cash. No one's ever even tried. But let me tell you one thing that is interesting. This is the thing that's interesting that I had no idea and I never would have thought of. Bitcoiners are collectors. They like art. They like vintage. They like the things that they can get where they see that there's value. They're going to pay the price and they're going to get their value out of it. I belong to a group of guys, and there are guys in there who have been collecting Bitcoin stuff or interesting parts of the history of it, whatever, since 2011. And oh my gosh, the stuff that I've learned from them has been fascinating. Like, have you ever heard of a cassatious coin?
No.
Ooh, okay. I'm going to tell you about a cassatious coin because this is what I would like to have one. There was a man, his name was Matthew. He created these coins, put Bitcoin on them. So they were actual, circular coins. They were about the size of a quarter. He had rolls of them and he would give them to people to promote Bitcoin. You could peel the sticker off. The code was there so you could cash it in. There's even a website where you can see all of the cassatious coins, whether they were cashed in or they're still viable, there's still Bitcoin on them. And I want one of these. He's so bad. I don't know why, I want it for my collection.
So there's
And
treasure out there with
there
live real
is.
Bitcoin on it.
You bet there is. And
Do you look on eBay?
I have, yeah, there is. There definitely, if you look on eBay for Bitcoin and you just like sort by highest price, you're going to find like a lot of mining equipment and stuff, but then you will get to the coins. So now I'm collecting, there's different, they're all independent. They're all like artists and they'll create little coins that have a really great scene on them. And there's Bitcoin. So I don't buy one unless there's at least a little bit of Bitcoin on it, because
Because
the way I see it.
there's some trust there, right? Because you have to
Sure.
trust that once you get the Bitcoin, it's going to actually give you Bitcoin.
Yes. So everything I've bought has that proof, like the guys who are making them, like I said, are usually independent and they'll have a site with the serial number of each coin, whether it's been cashed in, how much is in it. And, like ballet cards. Have you seen ballet wallets? They
Yes.
will make, so Tone does the Unconfiscatable poker tournament. He puts all the prizes on those cards because it's a tournament that you enter in Bitcoin and you receive that as a prize. And it's a bounty tournament too, which means if you knock somebody out, you get their bounty card. So these bounty cards would have like 0.003 Bitcoin on them. And so like I have some of those and just different ones that I've collected over the years. And I mean, it hasn't been that many years I started collecting them, but I don't know. I find them very interesting and there is so much history in it now. It's like at some point somebody's going to go, wow. And it also just shows you that you can keep Bitcoin on a piece of paper. You could keep it in your head. You could make Bitcoin paper airplanes and have the code and everything there. And that little paper airplane can lead you back to your Bitcoin, which is unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
you
And
could
that's
just put
some
a code on
fun,
something.
that's some fun ways. We need
Yes.
some fun ways to orange pill some people, as you
Yes.
mentioned with your kids. Just because we get it doesn't mean everybody around us and everybody we love get it.
Oh, my kids think I'm crazy Bitcoin mom. That's what my kids think.
Yeah, I know the
Well,
feeling.
you have kids too?
No, no kids, but my family think I'm
Ah,
crazy. But
gotcha.
but but my niece, who's around 19, she had a gold coin, and I said, "Hey, Gemma, let me put that in Bitcoin, and we'll if it goes down, I'll give you the value in gold." But
Yeah.
so we switched it also around 30,000, and so yeah,
Good.
I mean the price helps
Oh,
for
that's
people.
so good for a 19-year-old. That makes me
Yeah,
happy.
it is.
That's
But she,
great.
she still hasn't. It's
Good.
like all of our journeys. Unless you understand it, you might sell.
Right. And
Unfortunately,
I think the technique for them is that if you sell this, you're going to have to pay half of it in taxes. So don't touch this.
that's
And
a great point.
yeah.
There's taxes.
Yep.
Yes. So in the meantime, I am going to do my best to educate her on the cycles that it might crash.
Yep.
But in the long term, you could have a lot more in the future
You
than
bet.
if
And if it
you
was
sell.
30 something, I don't
Yeah.
see us going back there.
No,
Not yet.
no,
No, I don't see it.
no. Even, yeah, it's going to be an interesting year.
I could see us come back to 50. I could see us even coming back into the mid 40s, but 30 would be, but anything can happen. As we know, we've seen it with COVID, we've seen it with other things. It can happen. And
Yeah.
one thing that I've
Anything
learned
can
is be
happen.
ready to buy. I don't care if it's 500 bucks worth. You see that happen, you be ready.
Exactly. Exactly. Many of us come for the number go up, but we stay for everything else that it
Well, and
represents.
you mentioned Jeff Booth. I mean, that is my favorite book.
Price of
Jeff,
tomorrow
yes. I mean, it's fascinating. The whole thing. He never even says the word Bitcoin in it.
until the
But
end. One
yeah,
paragraph.
yep. And but it leads you right to where we need to be. And that is Bitcoin. Like all of these things that are happening, like his everything talking about the parking. You remember that part? Like where he's talking about the parking and how much of the space is wasted on parking and cars and just so many things are becoming illogical. And because it takes so long to create like an infrastructure, it will take a long time to unwind it as well. But I mean, I feel like Jeff is dead on. And so he's always been a great guide in this journey. And I don't think, especially, the finance, there's a lot of finance people in our space, but I wholeheartedly they believe in the number go up, but I wholeheartedly know that they believe in the tech behind it or they wouldn't be here.
And that reminds me, in your Bitcoin conference,
Mhm.
some of the people that you've had, amazing guests and very intelligent. Was there anything that stood out for you?
So the person who has stood out for me the most over the past 2 years, okay, is Bob Burnett. Do you know Bob?
No.
Oh, you're going to need to interview Bob. So Bob Burnett is one of the original founders of Gateway Computers. And Bob is 58 or 59. When I met him, I talked to him. He owns Barefoot Mining. He's a Bitcoin man. All right. He is married to a woman named Lola, who's wonderful, and I've met her, and I actually saw her for lunch a couple weeks ago. And he left Gateway. Here's the thing that he understood. He was there when they took it public. He was in his 30s. They took this company public, and he watched the debauchery and you're going public because it brings in a bunch of money. Okay. Now they had a great product and they were doing great business. So there's nothing about that was fake. And it took them a few years to get there. And what's happening in the Bitcoin space is like all of these Bitcoin mining companies that went public. Well, they did it so that they could get an infusion of cash. They did it through a SPAC. Like, this is not how things used to work in the 90s. When you went public, it took you a couple of years. Like, you had to be qualified to do that. Today, just about anybody can go public if you know what you're doing. And Bob was really instrumental in showing me that that's a fiat mindset. Being a publicly traded mining company, your your priority is towards your customer or your investor. Your priority is not protecting the core layer of Bitcoin. Okay. So Bob, because of his experience, because he's been there, you're talking about a bunch of 30-year-olds are running the Bitcoin world who've never seen any of that. And it was his experience with people and banks, and his wife, who's very intuitive, he had gotten a call. Let's see. He started mining. Somebody asked him to build servers to mine Ethereum. And he's like, well, I guess I could do that. So he did this for the client. So it was a good payday. But when he started to look into the software and everything else, he didn't trust it. And, this came from his own programming background and all of that. So he became a Bitcoin miner and a Bitcoin enthusiast or obsessed, whatever we are. And it's like, I feel like his views on this are so important because he has the experience where so many others don't. And he sees so it's like he has this view into the real world and how the real world operates in terms of money, finance, companies. And Bitcoin does not fit into any of this, which excites him. And what are we going to do with it? It's like there's no one more I trust on earth to like figure it out than him because of where he comes from and his wisdom and experience. And I feel like that is something like more. I tell everybody, you need to listen to Bob Burnett. Like he'll explain things, and he'll explain things that have to do with many pieces of Bitcoin. Like he sees that we're going to come to a place where block space is going to be very scarce. You're not going to, and that there will be a market for trading block space. So like, let's say you're BlackRock and you have to have the same amount of Bitcoin that you say is in your ETF. You have to prove that you have it. Well, the best way to, like they could be mining their own Bitcoin and like have their own supply. And when it gets to the point, like we had those periods of time where the fees were really high over the past year, we could get to a point where that's how it is all the time. And unless you have a certain amount of Bitcoin, it's not even going to be worth you making a transaction because the fees will be so expensive. So like he believes that there will be a block space market. So certain companies like BlackRock, they have their own block space and it is ready for their clients when they need to make that transaction. Now they may have bought that space years ago, but they haven't. And so like there will be a market where they're trading that space. Like that's going to become very scarce. So there's just things like that I've learned from Bob, and you should have him on because he's great. And he'll open your eyes to things. You'll be like, oh my God, I never even thought of that.
I will. I will.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about Bitcoin is you learn something from everybody. And I
So I
definitely
look
will.
forward to his talks. I look forward to seeing him at a conference. And, he told this amazing story about mining, about rabbits, horses, and elephants. And I'm gonna tell you the story because it's my favorite thing. And this story is about publicly traded Bitcoin mining. All right. So he said, picture yourself as a farmer, and you walk out your back door, and you've got green rolling hills out back, and all you see is white rabbits everywhere. All right. And you're like, oh my God, they're eating my grass. They never stop. Um, Destroying everything. We got to get rid of these things. So you get your shotgun, you cock it, and you can even shoot up into the air, and these things are going to scatter. Okay. And they may not come back to where you are, but they're going to go and they're going to be fine. Right. They're going to be just fine. But they're off your lawn. Horses. So imagine a bunch of wild horses in the same scenario. You can pull your gun out. Now these guys they're going to take a little bit longer. You might hit a few, but they're going to go away and they're going to rejoin each other, and they're going to be back in business and on their merry way someplace else. Elephants. Imagine the same thing with elephants. And you shoot, and you can shoot them all because they don't move fast enough. They can't regroup. And that is a publicly traded mining company. Too big, too slow. And so the rabbits and the horses, like for example, if the United States decided they did not want any more Bitcoin mining happening in the United States, what's happening to the big ones? They're done. They've built huge infrastructure that cannot be moved. It's just one of the things about Bitcoin that is so important that makes no sense from that point of view. It's like a publicly traded mining company that can't pick itself up and go somewhere else in the event of an issue is trapped and dead.
Well, and that just reminds me. So if you're going to invest in publicly traded miners, know that it's a dangerous game, and that
I would not,
the smaller
because
ones can move around. But the good news is for Bitcoiners, because that there are miners all over the world, and
yes.
TikTok next block, the US can shut it
Listen, the
down.
rabbits is who is going to control Bitcoin. The
Yeah.
rabbits is who you want because they're spread everywhere and they can survive everywhere. And that is what is so important to Bitcoin. And, I went to Mining Disrupt in Miami, and that was kind of the kickoff to everyone getting those little BitX miners that you see all over Twitter. And, people are having a ball being a Bitcoin miner, and it does help. It sure doesn't hurt. And the more people that you get to do that, the better I feel about all of it.
Well, so you're a Bitcoin rabbit miner,
I
and
am.
also running a node is another way to support the network.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
More people running nodes. I'm not running a node. I will admit that. I did at one point, and then it got over my head. So I haven't, but I am a miner, and I guess that'll have to be my contribution. But yes, if you can run a node, definitely do it.
So how has Bitcoin changed you?
I'm a different person. I mean, like I said, let's see, I used to wear all black. I used to be a mom. I mean, I am a mom still, but it was like I was the mom, business owner, wearing all black. Just I don't know. I wasn't really myself. I guess I feel like I'm more of who I really am to my core today, where maybe I never would have been, if that makes any sense at all. Like I don't wear all black today. I don't, I'm just happier and I feel more hope. That's my biggest word. Bitcoin for me is hope, and hope for the future of my kids and my grandchildren, that there is something here that's going to not keep us trapped in that, middle to lower class, working class place that we come from. And most people, you can't get out of that when you're born there. That's what you learn. And just people don't wake up and go, oh, how do I get out of here? No, it's not what you do. You stay with what you've learned and what you're comfortable with. And I'm so happy that I was able to accidentally buy that Bitcoin internet money. Because if I hadn't done that, I don't know what I would be doing right now. I sure wouldn't be doing this.
I love that because from listening to you, I hear that you were doing what you loved. You
Mm-hmm.
were in vintage art and an antique dealer, doing what
Yeah.
you love, but not enough hope for the future.
No, and it
And
was
Bitcoin
hard.
has
You
turned
know,
that around.
Yes. I mean, running a monthly market was incredibly hard on my family. My husband and I are working together. It's not a big money business. It's enough to survive, but it's a lot of work. You're dealing with a lot of people. You're responsible for other people's livelihood. And I took that very seriously, and it was very stressful. And so that is one reason, like, my husband and I were ready to kill each other. We were both, if the show's monthly, you really only had a couple of days off after the last one until you had to start working on the next one. And the closer you get, the more stress there was. And that was why we retired it, because we were going to kill each other if we didn't. And it was just time. It was time. And so while I was doing what I loved, I do have this tendency to go in 1,000%, and not all of it might work. You know what I mean? Like, I loved the buying and selling part. So that's where this is a good, I'm glad you said this. So I live when I'm in Miami Beach, I'm right by Lincoln Road, where starting next month, they have the Lincoln Road Antique and Vintage Market every other week. So I've decided I'm going to be selling there. I'm going back to square one. I'm going to go back to basics by myself, set up my tables, have my tent, have my stuff, I accept Bitcoin here, and I'm going to figure out how much can I do. And the one thing that I am coming into it with is a reputation. So I have the reputation of owning the Vintage Garage, which, if you're in the vintage world, most people in the United States have heard of it. And then the Nashville show is very admired because it does so well. So I'm coming in with a reputation, and they could listen to me. And if they do, I'm going to be making them take Bitcoin. And there's so many Bitcoiners in this area that I feel like if they started to come to the market and and I told people, hey, they'd support you if you accepted Bitcoin. They would try to buy from you. So I have a plan, a little bit of a plan. And being a part of the Bitcoin collecting world, I know there is that piece of people, that group of people that really will support people who transact in Bitcoin.
I
So
agree.
that's my goal. And
I
that's where
like
I'm going to
that.
be starting in October.
In October. Well, I hope to come and see you and see you
Yes.
at the meetup and
Yes, that'd be great.
yeah, bring some Bitcoin friends. And is that where people can find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter. If you're looking to connect with me, my handle is girls_Bitcoin. When I
Hmm.
started my Twitter account, there were no girls, and so I called it Bitcoin for Girls because I thought it was funny, and I posted unicorns and pink with everything, and because I don't know, I thought it was kind of funny. But then everybody thought I was trying to start a movement. I'm like, no, I was just trying to be funny. Never mind. That's my handle.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that. So girls_Bitcoin on X.
Yep.
And thank you so much for joining me today. This was
Thanks for
fun.
having me. Thanks for letting me ramble on.